He only needed 10 days to save his home. But one wrong message sent at 2:18 a.m. reached the last person he ever expected. And what she did next would expose a truth powerful enough to shake an entire company. A struggling black single father, Marcus Reed thought he had nothing left but pride and a ticking eviction notice. But when his quiet plea for help accidentally lands in the hands of his CEO, Evelyn Carter, it sets off a chain of events neither of them can control. What begins as a mistake quickly turns into a fight for truth, dignity, and survival, forcing both of them to choose between staying silent or risking everything. He never meant to be seen. She never planned to get involved. But sometimes, the moment you want to take back the most is the one that changes your life forever. The kitchen light flickered once before settling into a dull yellow glow that barely reached the corners of the room. It made everything look older than it was: the peeling paint near the window, the chipped edge of the countertop, the stack of unopened mail that had been quietly growing for weeks. Marcus Reed sat at the small table, elbows resting on the worn wood, his hands clasped together like he was trying to hold something in place that had already slipped away. Outside, a city bus roared past, its brakes hissing as it stopped at the corner. The sound vibrated through the thin walls of the apartment, then faded into the distance. The Bronx never really slept. It just shifted. On the refrigerator, held in place by a cheap magnet shaped like a cartoon apple, was a piece of paper that didn't belong in a home. Final notice. The words were printed in bold, official black ink. Below it, smaller text spelled out what Marcus had already memorized without meaning to. 48 hours. Full payment required. Vacate the premises. He looked at it for a long time. Like if he stared hard enough, the letters might rearrange themselves into something else. Something softer. Something forgiving. They didn't. His wallet sat open on the table beside him. Inside were 4 wrinkled dollar bills and a receipt from a gas station 2 nights ago. He hadn't even meant to keep it. It just ended up there, like everything else he didn't have the energy to deal with. From the other room came a soft, steady sound. Breathing. Marcus turned his head slightly, listening. Kayla was asleep on the couch, curled up under a blanket that was a little too small for her now. One of her braids had come loose, resting against her cheek. Her small hand was tucked under her chin, just like it always was. She trusted him. That was the part that hurt the most. Marcus swallowed hard and looked back at the table. His phone lay face down beside the eviction notice. He hadn't picked it up in almost 10 minutes. Not because he didn't know what to do, but because he did. He flipped it over. The screen lit up, bright and unforgiving. He opened his messages and scrolled to the contact he needed. The name sat there, simple and ordinary. Rucker. Landlord. Marcus stared at it, then tapped the message field. His fingers hovered over the keyboard. He'd written messages like this before. Careful ones. Measured ones. The kind that tried to sound calm even when nothing about the situation was. He started typing. Mr. Rucker, I know I'm behind and I take full responsibility for that. I'm expecting a paycheck in about 10 days. He paused, erased a word, retyped it. I can cover the full balance then. I'm asking for a short extension, just 10 more days. I understand if there are conditions. I'm willing to put it in writing. His fingers slowed as he reached the end. The message didn't feel strong. It didn't feel convincing. It felt small. Like him. Marcus read it over once, then again. He thought about adding something else. Something more urgent, more honest. He didn't. He hit send. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the message shifted up the screen, settling into place. The name at the top of the thread became visible. Marcus frowned. That wasn't right. His eyes locked onto the contact name. His brain took a second, just 1 second too long, to catch up. Evelyn Carter. His stomach dropped so fast it felt like the floor had disappeared beneath him. No, 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 no. He sat up straight, fingers flying across the screen as he opened the thread again, as if that might somehow change what had already happened. Evelyn Carter, CEO, Harbor Light Communities. The woman whose name appeared at the bottom of company-wide emails. The woman who ran buildings Marcus cleaned at night. The woman who had never, not once, spoken directly to him. He had her number saved from an internal memo. Standard procedure. In case of emergencies. This was not the kind of emergency that was supposed to reach her. Marcus's breath came faster now. He started typing again, thumbs slipping over the keys. "I'm sorry, that message wasn't meant for you. Please disregard." He sent it before he could think. Then he set the phone down on the table like it might burn him if he held onto it too long. His palms pressed flat against the wood. He leaned forward, head bowed, eyes shut tight. What had she just read? A grown man, one of her workers, begging for 10 days, laying out his failure in plain, quiet sentences. He let out a slow breath that didn't feel like relief. There was no taking it back. The kitchen clock ticked softly on the wall. 1 second, then another. Marcus didn't want to look at the phone again. He did anyway. The screen lit up in his hand. A new message. He stared at it for a long time before opening it, like maybe if he waited long enough it would disappear on its own. It didn't. He tapped. 4 words appeared first. "Don't leave that apartment." Marcus blinked, then the rest loaded beneath it. "What's your address?" His heart started pounding. Another message came in before he could process the first. "How much do you owe?" And then another. "Who is your landlord?" Marcus sat there, frozen, the glow of the screen reflecting in his eyes. There was no greeting, no apology, no soft tone to cushion the questions. Just direct, immediate. Like she'd been awake. Like she'd been waiting for something to happen. It was 2:18 in the morning. Marcus looked toward the living room again, toward the shape of his daughter under the blanket. Then back at the phone. He didn't understand what was happening. He didn't understand why she cared. He didn't even understand if this was help or something else entirely. But for the first time that night, something shifted inside his chest. Not hope. Not yet. Just movement. He typed slowly this time. Careful, deliberate. He gave her the address. He gave her the number. He told her the name. Lennox Rucker. He hit send. The reply came faster than before. "Do not sign anything." Another message. "Do not make any payments under pressure." And then, after a pause that felt heavier than the others, "Come to my office in the morning." Marcus stared at the words. Outside, another bus passed. Somewhere upstairs, a door slammed. The city kept moving like nothing had changed, but everything had. He turned off the kitchen light and sat there in the dark, the phone still in his hand, the screen slowly dimming. He didn't know what she wanted. He didn't know what this meant. All he knew was this: a message that was never supposed to be seen had just reached the one person who could change everything, and he had no idea what that change was going to cost him. Morning came too fast. Marcus didn't remember falling asleep, only that at some point the kitchen chair had stopped being a place to sit and had turned into something closer to survival. When he opened his eyes, the pale gray light of early morning was slipping through the cracked window, cutting thin lines across the floor. His neck ached. His hands were still resting on the table, stiff from not moving. For a second, he didn't remember. Then the phone in his hand buzzed softly. Everything came rushing back. The message, the name, Evelyn Carter. Marcus sat up slowly, like any sudden movement might break whatever fragile balance had formed overnight. He glanced toward the living room. Kayla was still asleep, her blanket tangled around her legs, the morning light catching the soft rise and fall of her breathing. He stayed there for a moment, just watching her. Then he stood. The kitchen smelled faintly of last night's coffee, cold and bitter. He moved quietly, careful not to wake her, grabbing his shirt from the back of the chair and pulling it on. It was wrinkled, but it would have to do. His phone buzzed again. A new message. 10 a.m., front entrance. Ask for me. No signature, no extra words, just instruction. Marcus stared at it. He didn't respond. He didn't know how. By the time Kayla woke up, he had already packed her lunch and laid out her purple jacket on the couch. She rubbed her eyes, looking around like she always did, as if making sure everything was still where it was supposed to be. "Morning, Daddy," she said softly. "Morning, baby." She slid off the couch and walked over to him, wrapping her arms around his waist. He held her for a second longer than usual. "You working today?" she asked. "Yeah," he said, after a pause that was almost too small to notice. "Something like that." She nodded, like that made sense. It always amazed him how much she accepted without question. He walked her down the street to Mrs. Opal's apartment, 2 doors over. The older woman answered the door in her robe, her gray hair wrapped in a scarf, eyes sharp even this early in the morning. She took one look at Marcus and didn't ask a single question. "I got her," she said, stepping aside. Kayla hugged his leg once before going inside. Marcus watched her disappear into the warmth of that small apartment, the smell of something sweet already drifting out from the kitchen. "Thank you," he said quietly. Opal gave him a look that said she already knew what he wasn't saying. "Go handle what you need to handle," she replied. Marcus nodded, then turned and walked away. The subway ride into Manhattan felt longer than usual. The train rattled through tunnels, the overhead lights flickering in a rhythm that made everything feel slightly off. Marcus stood near the door, one hand gripping the metal pole, his reflection faint in the scratched window. He looked tired. More than that, he looked like someone who didn't belong where he was headed. By the time he stepped out onto the street, the city had fully woken up. Cars honked, people moved fast, heads down, coffee cups in hand. The air smelled like exhaust and something fried from a food cart on the corner. And then he saw it. Harbor Lights headquarters rose above everything else, glass and steel catching the sunlight like it had something to prove. It wasn't just a building, it was a statement. Marcus stopped on the sidewalk. He had been here before, plenty of times, but never like this. Usually he entered through the side, the service door, the one near the dumpsters and loading dock where the lights buzzed and nobody looked twice at who came in or out. The front entrance was different, clean, polished, designed for people who expected to be seen. Marcus looked down at his shirt, smoothing it once with his hands. It didn't help much. Then he walked forward. The glass doors opened automatically, silent and smooth. Inside, everything was bright, too bright. Marble floors, high ceilings, a front desk that looked more like something out of a hotel than an office. People moved through the space like they knew exactly where they were going. Marcus slowed. For a moment he considered turning around. But then he thought about the paper on his refrigerator. 48 hours. He kept walking. The receptionist barely looked up at first. When she did, her eyes flicked over him quickly, taking in his clothes, his posture, the way he hesitated just slightly in the middle of the floor. "Can I help you?" she asked, her tone polite but distant. Marcus swallowed. I'm here to see Ms. Carter." That got her attention. Her eyes lifted fully now, studying him in a way that made the space between them feel wider. "Do you have an appointment?" He hesitated. "Yes." She typed something into her computer. The clicking of the keys echoed louder than it should have. Then her expression shifted, just a little. "Go ahead," she said, gesturing toward the elevators. 32nd floor. Marcus blinked. That was it? No questions, no challenge. It felt wrong, like something had already been decided without him. The elevator ride was silent. Marcus stood alone, watching the numbers climb. Each floor felt like it was taking him farther away from anything familiar. When the doors opened, the hallway was quiet, carpeted, controlled. The kind of quiet that made you aware of every sound you made. At the end of the hall, a door stood open. He knew it was hers before he even stepped inside. Evelyn Carter stood near the window, looking out over the city. From up here, everything looked smaller, manageable. She turned when she heard him. For a second, neither of them spoke. She was younger than he expected, mid-30s maybe, composed in a way that didn't feel forced. Her expression was neutral, but not cold, just unreadable. "Mr. Reed," she said. Her voice was calm, even. She gestured toward the chair across from her desk. "Sit." Marcus did. The chair felt too soft, like it wasn't meant for someone who spent most of his nights standing on concrete floors. Evelyn walked over and sat across from him, placing a thin folder on the desk. She didn't smile, didn't soften the moment. She simply looked at him. "I read your message," she said. Marcus nodded, his hands resting on his knees. "I'm sorry about that," he replied. "It wasn't meant for you." "I know." The way she said it made it clear she wasn't interested in that part of the conversation. She opened the folder. "This is your lease," she continued, "and the eviction notice you described." Marcus's head lifted slightly. "How? You gave me the address," she said simply. "Of course." He exhaled quietly. She flipped a page. "The timeline doesn't match standard guidelines," she added. 48 hours is aggressive." Marcus let out a small, humorless breath. "That's one way to put it." Her eyes met his. "Have you signed anything?" "No." "Have you made any payments under pressure?" "No." "Good." The word landed with more weight than it should have. Marcus shifted in his seat. "Look," he said, his voice steady but tight. "I didn't come here for charity. If there's some kind of program, I'll apply like everyone else. But I'm not asking you to fix my situation because you feel bad for me." The room went still. Evelyn studied him for a moment. "I don't feel bad for you," she said. Marcus frowned slightly. She leaned back in her chair, hands resting lightly on the desk. "I'm looking at a system connected to my company that isn't operating the way it's supposed to," she continued. "Your message didn't create that problem. It just pointed at it." Marcus didn't respond. "I'm going to have my legal team review this," she added. "In the meantime, you don't leave that apartment." There it was again. Not a suggestion, a directive. Marcus sat there, unsure what to do with that. Outside the window, the city moved on like nothing had changed. But inside that office, something had shifted, and he couldn't tell yet whether it was about to save him or pull him deeper into something he wasn't ready for. The air outside bit harder that evening. Baltimore had a different kind of cold than New York. It wasn't just the temperature. It was the way it settled into the buildings, into the bones of the streets, into the silence between people who had learned not to expect too much. Marcus pulled his jacket tighter as he stepped out of the service entrance of Harbor Lights' East Side property. The metal door slammed behind him with a hollow echo that bounced off the brick walls of the alley. His shift had ended 20 minutes ago. Most of the crew had already left, but Marcus didn't go home. Not right away. He stood there for a moment, looking up at the building. 6 stories. Old brick. Windows that hadn't been replaced in decades. A place people stayed in because they didn't have somewhere better to go. He knew that feeling. From somewhere inside, faint and uneven, came the sound of pipes knocking. Marcus frowned. That wasn't new. He'd heard it the night before, and the night before that. But tonight, it sounded worse. He could have walked away. No one had asked him to check it. It wasn't on his work order. His shift was over. He'd already done what he was paid to do. He thought about Kayla, about the way she curled up under that too-small blanket, about how cold their apartment felt when the heat didn't kick in fast enough. Marcus turned back toward the door. The hallway inside was dim, the fluorescent lights overhead humming with a tired, uneven buzz. The smell hit him first, a mix of dust, old paint, and something faintly metallic. He moved toward the stairwell, boots echoing softly against the concrete steps as he climbed. 2nd floor, 3rd. By the time he reached the 4th, the knocking had turned into a steady, hollow rhythm. Marcus pushed open the door to the mechanical room. The air inside was warmer, but not in a good way. It felt thick, like something wasn't moving the way it should. He stepped closer to the boiler system, crouching slightly, listening. There. A valve, not seated right. He reached out, running his hand along the pipe, feeling the vibration travel through the metal. It didn't take long for him to see it, a misaligned connection, subtle but enough to throw the whole system off balance. Marcus exhaled slowly. He didn't grab his tools right away. Instead, he stood there for a second, staring at it. This wasn't his job tonight. Nobody would know if he left it. Nobody would blame him. But someone upstairs was probably wrapped in 2 blankets right now, wondering why the heat never stayed on. Marcus shook his head slightly, like he was answering a question only he could hear. Then, he got to work. Time slipped. Minutes turned into something longer. The sounds of the building faded into the background, replaced by the rhythm of his hands moving, tightening, adjusting, checking, then checking again. By the time he finished, the knocking had stopped. In its place, there was a steady, quiet hum, the kind of sound that meant things were working the way they were supposed to. Marcus wiped his hands on his jeans and stood up slowly, stretching his back. "Mr. Reed?" The voice came from the doorway. He turned. An older woman stood there, wrapped in a thick sweater that had seen better days. Her gray hair was pulled back, and her eyes, sharp despite the years, watched him with quiet curiosity. "I heard you come in," she said. "The heat. It's steady now." Marcus nodded once. "Should be." She stepped a little closer, looking at the system like it might disappear if she blinked. "They told us last winter it couldn't be fixed without replacing half the building," she said. "Said it would take weeks." Marcus shrugged lightly. "Sometimes it's not the whole thing," he replied. "Sometimes it's just one piece in the wrong place." The woman studied him for a moment. "You're not on the day crew," she said. "No, ma'am." "You don't have to be here." He didn't answer right away. "No," he said finally. "I don't." There was a pause. Then she smiled, small but real. "Well," she said, "I'm glad you were." Marcus nodded, then turned to leave. "Wait," she called gently. He stopped. She reached into her pocket and pulled out a few folded bills, holding them out toward him. "It's not much," she said, "but it's what I can do." Marcus looked at the money, then at her. He shook his head. "You don't owe me anything." She frowned slightly. "You did something for us." Marcus's expression didn't change. "Someone should," he said. The words came out simple, like they didn't need anything else added to them. The woman hesitated, then slowly lowered her hand. "God sees that," she said quietly. Marcus didn't respond. He just gave her a small nod and walked past her, out into the hallway. As he moved toward the stairs, he noticed a boy sitting on the steps, maybe 8 or 9 years old. A thin jacket zipped all the way up, knees pulled close to his chest. The boy looked up at him. "You fixed it?" he asked. Marcus paused. "Yeah." The boy's face shifted, not into a smile exactly, but something close. "My mom said it was never going to work right," he said. Marcus leaned against the wall for a second. "Sometimes people get used to things being broken," he replied. "Doesn't mean they have to stay that way." The boy tilted his head. "Why'd you do it?" he asked. Marcus looked at him. There it was again. That question. He thought about his own father for a second, about the man who used to fix things in other people's homes while theirs slowly fell apart. He thought about the nights he'd gone to bed cold, pretending it didn't matter. He thought about Kayla. "Because someone should," he said again. The boy nodded like that made sense. Marcus pushed off the wall and headed down the stairs. Outside, the cold hit him again, but it felt different now, sharper maybe, or maybe he was just more aware of it. He reached into his pocket and pulled out his phone. No new messages. Not from Evelyn, not from anyone. He stared at the screen for a moment, then slid it back into his pocket. For a brief second, he wondered if she even remembered their conversation. If it had just been a moment for her. A late-night distraction. Something she'd already moved past. Marcus let out a slow breath and started walking toward the bus stop. The street lights buzzed overhead, casting long shadows across the cracked pavement. Somewhere in the distance, a siren wailed, then faded. He kept his head down as he walked. Didn't notice the car parked across the street. Didn't see the figure inside, watching him through the windshield. Didn't know that someone had seen exactly what he'd just done, and was already deciding what it meant, or what it could be used for. The bus pulled up with a hiss, doors folding open. Marcus stepped inside, dropped his last few dollars into the fare box, and took a seat near the back. As the bus pulled away, the building behind him stood quiet, warm, for the first time in a long time. And somewhere inside, a woman sat by her window, hands wrapped around a cup of tea, feeling heat rise through the pipes, and whispering a quiet thank you to a man who hadn't asked for anything in return. Marcus stared out the window as the city passed by in streaks of light and shadow. He didn't know it yet, but that small, quiet decision to stay, to fix something that wasn't his responsibility, was about to follow him into a storm he couldn't see coming. And this time, doing the right thing might cost him more than he could afford. The next morning didn't feel different. That was the strange part. The city still moved. People still rushed past each other with coffee cups and tired eyes. The buses still hissed at every stop, doors folding open and shut like nothing had shifted overnight. But for Marcus, something had. He felt it in the way people looked at him. Not all of them, just enough. Harbor Light's maintenance floor was always loud in the mornings. Tools clanking, radios playing low, conversations bouncing off concrete walls. It was the kind of noise that made it easy to disappear into your work. Usually. Marcus stepped through the door and felt the shift almost immediately. It was subtle. A pause in a conversation. A glance that lasted half a second too long. Someone lowering their voice just as he passed. He kept walking, didn't slow down, didn't ask questions. He had learned a long time ago that silence was sometimes the only way to hold on to your dignity. He grabbed his clipboard from the rack and checked the assignments for the day. Routine maintenance, pipe checks, minor repairs, the kind of work that kept buildings running but never made headlines. Just the way he liked it. "Reed?" The voice cut through the room. Marcus turned. Brandon Cole stood near the far wall, arms crossed, expression already set in that familiar shape, half smile, half something sharper underneath. Brandon was the kind of man who didn't need to raise his voice to take control of a room. He had been there too long, knew too much about how things worked, the systems, the people, the shortcuts. "Morning," Marcus said evenly. Brandon pushed off the wall and walked toward him, slow and deliberate. "Got a minute?" he asked. It wasn't really a question. Marcus nodded once. They moved a few steps away from the others, but not far enough for privacy. That was intentional. Everything Brandon did had an audience, even when it didn't look like it. "I heard you've been busy," Brandon said, glancing down at the clipboard in Marcus's hand, then back up. "Just doing my job." Brandon's smile widened slightly. "Funny thing about that," he replied. "I didn't see anything on your work order about staying late last night." Marcus didn't react. "Heat system on East Side property," he said calmly. "It needed adjustment." Brandon tilted his head. "And you decided to take that on off the clock?" "Yes." There was a pause. Then Brandon let out a soft laugh, like he just heard something mildly amusing. "That's admirable," he said. "Really, going above and beyond." The way he said it made the words feel heavier than they should have. Marcus met his gaze. It needed to be fixed. Brandon nodded slowly. "Sure," he said. "But here's the thing, Marcus. Around here, we have procedures, chains of command, people whose job it is to decide what gets fixed and when." His voice stayed smooth, controlled. "But when someone starts making those decisions on their own," he continued, "it can create confusion." Marcus felt it then. Not anger, not yet. Something closer to recognition. He had seen this before. Different places, different faces, same message. Stay in your place. I didn't change anything permanent, Marcus said. Just corrected a valve alignment. Brandon's eyes flicked slightly, just for a second. A small detail, but Marcus caught it. Then the smile came back. Well, Brandon said, stepping a little closer, lowering his voice just enough to feel personal. Let's try to keep things within scope moving forward, okay? Marcus held his gaze. Okay. Brandon nodded once, then turned away like the conversation had already been filed and forgotten. But it hadn't. Not from Marcus. Not for the room. As Brandon walked off, a couple of the other workers avoided looking directly at Marcus. One of them gave a quick nod, something like respect, but didn't say anything. Marcus looked back down at his clipboard. The paper blurred slightly for a second before he forced his focus back into place. Work. That was what he had. That was what he could control. The hours passed slowly. Marcus moved through the building with the same steady rhythm he always had. Checking systems, tightening loose fittings, writing things down that nobody else bothered to track. But the feeling didn't leave. The sense that something had shifted. That he had stepped into a space he wasn't supposed to occupy. Around noon, he headed up to the operations floor to drop off a report. That was where the tone changed completely. The space upstairs was different, cleaner, quieter. The air smelled faintly of coffee and something polished. People here wore pressed shirts, sat behind screens, spoke in softer voices that carried more weight. Marcus approached the front desk, report in hand. The woman there glanced up, then did a double-take. "You're Marcus Reed?" she asked. He nodded. "Yeah." Her posture straightened slightly. "Just a moment," she said quickly, picking up the phone. Marcus stood there, feeling the eyes again. Not the same as downstairs. Not dismissive. Curious. The woman hung up and looked back at him. "Miss Carter would like to see you," she said. "Now." The word wasn't spoken, but it was there. Marcus felt his chest tighten. "Okay." She pointed toward the hallway. "Same one as yesterday. Same door at the end." Marcus walked it slower this time. Not because he was unsure, because he was aware. Aware that something was building. That the quiet movement of the past 24 hours was starting to take shape into something more visible. He reached the door, knocked once. "Come in," Evelyn's voice called. He stepped inside. She was at her desk this time, papers spread out in front of her, a laptop open, phone to the side. The city behind her, bright and distant. She looked up as he entered. "Mr. Reed, ma'am." She gestured to the chair again. He sat. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Then she closed the folder in front of her. "I had my team review the property your landlord manages," she said. Marcus's shoulders tensed slightly. "And?" he asked. Evelyn's expression didn't change, but something in her eyes sharpened. "There are discrepancies," she said. "Fees that don't align with the work reported. Charges applied without clear documentation." Marcus felt something settle in his chest. Not relief, confirmation. "I thought so," he said quietly. Evelyn studied him. "You've seen this before." It wasn't a question. Marcus nodded once. "Not here," he said. "But places like this, yeah." She leaned back slightly. "And you chose to bring it to me." Marcus hesitated. "I didn't bring it to you," he said. "I sent a message to the wrong number." For the first time, something close to a smile touched her face. "Accidents can be useful," she said. Marcus didn't respond. Evelyn tapped the folder lightly. "I'm going to escalate this," she continued, quietly, for now. "There are people involved who won't appreciate the attention." Marcus thought of Brandon, of the look in his eyes that morning. "You already have resistance," Evelyn added, as if reading his thoughts. Marcus met her gaze. "Yeah." She nodded slightly. "Then you need to be careful," she said. "Because if what I'm seeing is accurate, This isn't just about your apartment." The words hung in the air. Marcus felt the weight of them. Bigger than him. Bigger than one eviction notice. He stood slowly. "What do you need me to do?" he asked. Evelyn looked at him for a long second. Then she said something that shifted everything again. "For now," she replied, "keep doing exactly what you've been doing." Marcus frowned slightly. "Which is?" Her voice stayed calm. "Pay attention." A silence followed. "Not empty, heavy." Marcus nodded once. Then he turned and walked out of the office, back into the hallway, back into the building, back into a world that hadn't changed on the surface. But underneath, something was moving. And for the first time, Marcus understood one thing clearly. This wasn't just about staying in his apartment anymore. This was about something bigger, something hidden. And if he kept going, he wasn't just going to fix it. He was going to expose it. The question was, would anyone let him get that far? The answer came sooner than Marcus expected. It didn't arrive as a confrontation, not at first. It came in small things. A file that should have been there, missing. A maintenance log that suddenly showed a different timestamp than the one he remembered writing. A supervisor who stopped returning his routine check-in messages. At first, Marcus told himself it was coincidence. Systems glitched. People forgot things. Work got messy. But the pattern didn't feel messy. It felt deliberate. By the third day, he stopped telling himself it was nothing. That afternoon, Marcus found himself back in the mechanical room of the East Side property. Same hum of machinery, same faint metallic smell in the air. But something was off. He walked straight to the filing cabinet in the corner, the one that held printed maintenance records. Old habit. He trusted paper more than screens. He pulled open the drawer. The folder he had checked 2 nights ago. Gone. Marcus froze. He checked the next drawer, then the next. Nothing. His jaw tightened slightly. He wasn't surprised. That was the part that unsettled him. He stepped back, letting the silence of the room settle around him. Then he did something he hadn't planned to do. He reached into his bag and pulled out a thin stack of folded papers. Copies. He had made them the night before. Not because he expected trouble, he told himself that anyway, but because something in him had learned a long time ago not to rely on systems he didn't control. He flipped through them now, checking. Everything was still there. Every note, every discrepancy, every small detail that didn't line up. Marcus let out a slow breath. "They're already moving," he murmured under his breath. A sound behind him made him turn. "Talking to yourself now?" Brandon stood in the doorway, hands in his pockets, that same half-smile resting on his face like it had nowhere else to go. Marcus didn't answer right away. Brandon stepped inside, glancing around the room like he was inspecting something that belonged to him. "Funny thing," he said casually. "I was just looking for you." Marcus leaned back against the edge of the workbench. "Found me?" Brandon nodded. "Yeah," he said. "Seems like you've been busy." There it was again. That word. Marcus met his eyes. "Doing my job." Brandon chuckled softly. "You keep saying that," he replied. "But lately, your job's been expanding in interesting directions." Marcus didn't move. Brandon walked closer, stopping just a few feet away. "You know what I think?" he said quietly. "I think you're a smart guy who got a little too curious." Marcus's voice stayed even. "Curiosity's not a problem." "No," Brandon agreed. "Not until it is." Silence stretched between them. The machines hummed in the background, steady and indifferent. Brandon's gaze shifted briefly to the stack of papers in Marcus's hand, just for a second, then back to his face. "You ever notice," Brandon said, "how people who try to fix things outside their lane usually end up breaking something instead?" Marcus didn't look down at the papers, didn't hide them. "They were already broken," he said. Brandon's smile faded just slightly. "Maybe," he replied. "Or maybe you're seeing things that aren't really there." Marcus pushed off the workbench, standing fully upright now. I know what I saw. Brandon nodded slowly. I'm sure you do. Another pause. Then Brandon stepped closer, lowering his voice. But let me give you some advice, Marcus, he said. Advice you won't hear from anyone else in this building. Marcus didn't respond. Brandon's eyes held his. People don't like it when someone from the night shift starts acting like they understand the system better than the people who built it. The words weren't loud, but they landed hard. And people definitely don't like it, Brandon continued, when that someone starts asking questions that make other people uncomfortable. Marcus felt the tension rise in his chest. Not fear, something sharper. You worried about being uncomfortable? He asked quietly. Brandon's smile returned, but it didn't reach his eyes. I'm worried about efficiency, he said, and right now, you're creating the opposite of that. Marcus said nothing. Brandon straightened, stepping back like the conversation had reached its natural end. Just stay in your lane, he added lightly. It's safer there. He turned and walked out of the room. The door swung shut behind him with a dull, metallic click. Marcus stood there for a long moment, the sound echoing in the space he'd just left. Then he looked down at the papers in his hand, his notes, his evidence, his proof. He folded them carefully and slid them back into his bag. Outside, the building felt different now. Not just worn, watched. Every hallway, every door, every quiet conversation that stopped just a second too quickly when he passed. By the time he finished his shift, the weight of it sat heavy in his chest. This wasn't just resistance. This was pushback. And it wasn't going to stay quiet for long. That night, when Marcus got home, the apartment felt smaller than usual. Kayla sat at the table, coloring quietly. The soft scratch of crayon against paper filled the space. What you drawing? He asked, setting his bag down. A house, she said without looking up. Marcus smiled faintly. Yeah? She nodded. It's got a yellow door, she added, so we can always find it. Marcus's chest tightened just slightly. He walked over and looked at the drawing. Simple lines, bright colors. Safe. Looks good, he said. She glanced up at him. You tired? She asked. Little bit. She studied his face for a second longer than most kids would. You okay? Marcus hesitated. Then he nodded. Yeah, he said. I'm okay. She seemed to accept that, went back to her drawing. Marcus stood there, watching her for a moment. Then his phone buzzed. A message. He pulled it out. Evelyn, we need to talk. Tomorrow morning. No explanation, no detail, just that. Marcus stared at the screen. Then he looked back at Kayla, at the house with the yellow door, at the life he was trying to hold together one quiet decision at a time. He slid the phone back into his pocket. Whatever was coming next, it wasn't going to be small. And this time, he wasn't just in it. He was part of it. The question wasn't whether the truth would come out. It was what would be left standing when it did. The next morning felt heavier. Not louder, not faster, just heavier. Marcus noticed it the moment he stepped off the bus. The sky hung low over the city, a flat gray that pressed down on everything. Buildings, streets, people moving with their heads lowered like they already knew something was coming. He adjusted his jacket and walked toward Harbor Light, the glass building reflecting a version of the world that looked cleaner than the one he was standing in. Inside, the air was the same, controlled, quiet, polished. But something had shifted. He felt it before anyone said a word. The receptionist didn't meet his eyes this time. Two men standing near the elevators stopped talking when he passed. A woman at the far desk glanced at him, then quickly looked away like she'd seen something she wasn't supposed to. Marcus kept moving. He didn't slow down, didn't ask questions. He already knew. The hallway to the executive offices felt longer than before. Each step echoed softly against the carpet, the sound swallowed almost as soon as it was made. At the end of the hall, Evelyn's door stood slightly open. He knocked once. "Come in," she said. Marcus stepped inside. She was already seated, a stack of papers in front of her, a second folder open beside it. Her posture was the same, composed, precise, but her eyes were sharper now, more focused. "Close the door," she said. Marcus did. The soft click behind him felt final. He took the chair across from her without being asked this time. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Then Evelyn slid one of the folders toward him. "Look at this," she said. Marcus opened it. His eyes moved quickly across the page, then slowed, then stopped. "These aren't right," he said quietly. "No," Evelyn replied. "They're not." The document showed access logs, digital ones, time-stamped entries tied to his employee ID. Marcus leaned forward slightly, scanning them again. "These say I accessed vendor files at night," he said, "after my shift." Evelyn nodded. "And did you?" Marcus looked up. "No." He didn't hesitate. Didn't need to think. Evelyn studied him for a moment, then tapped the page lightly. "These logs were modified," she said, "recently." Marcus's chest tightened. By who? She didn't answer right away. Instead, she reached for another document and placed it on top. "Human Resources opened an internal complaint this morning," she said. Marcus felt the shift, the drop. "Against me," he said. "Yes." He leaned back slightly, exhaling through his nose. "What are they saying?" Evelyn's voice stayed level. "That you accessed restricted files outside your authorization. That you've been gathering internal data without approval." Marcus let out a quiet, humorless breath. "Convenient." "Yes," she said. The word landed harder than anything else. Marcus ran a hand over his face, then let it drop. "They're trying to bury it," he said. Evelyn didn't respond, because they both knew that wasn't a question. A knock at the door broke the silence. Evelyn didn't look away from Marcus. "Come in." The door opened. A woman in a gray blazer stepped inside, mid-40s, composed, her expression carefully neutral. "Maren Holt," she said. "Human Resources." Marcus recognized the name. He had seen it on company emails, policies, notices, never in person. "Mr. Reed," she added, giving him a small nod. Marcus returned it. "Maren," Evelyn said, her tone shifting just slightly. "We were just reviewing the situation." Maren stepped closer, holding a tablet in her hands. "I'm aware," she said, "and I'll be handling the investigation moving forward." Marcus felt something tighten in his chest. Investigation. That word had weight. Procedure, process, time. All things he didn't have. Maren glanced at him. "I'll need you to come with me," she said. "There are a few questions we need to go through formally." Marcus didn't move right away. He looked at Evelyn. Not asking for permission, just checking. She gave a small nod. "Go." Marcus stood. The room felt smaller now, the air heavier. As he walked past Maren, she stepped aside just enough to let him through. No hostility, no warmth, just distance. The kind that comes when someone hasn't decided what you are yet. The conference room was on the same floor, but it felt like a different world. No windows, fluorescent lights, a long table with too many empty chairs. Marcus sat on one side, Maren sat across from him. She placed the tablet down and folded her hands. "This is a formal review," she said. "I want to make that clear from the beginning." Marcus nodded once. "I understand." She studied him for a moment, then she began. "Have you accessed vendor files within the last 2 weeks?" "Yes." "Were you authorized to do so?" Marcus paused, then answered carefully. "I accessed them as part of a maintenance review," he said, "to verify discrepancies between work orders and physical records." Maren's eyes flickered slightly. "That's outside your standard scope." Marcus didn't argue. "Yes," he said. "Did anyone instruct you to conduct that review?" No. Silence settled between them. Marin tapped something on the tablet. Then help me understand, she said, why you believed that was appropriate. Marcus looked at her, really looked, and for a second he saw something there. Not judgment, not yet. Just someone trying to follow the process. I saw something that didn't make sense, he said, and I checked it. That's not how this organization operates. Marcus held her gaze. Maybe that's the problem. The words hung in the air. Marin didn't respond immediately, but something in her expression shifted, just slightly. Then the door opened again. Marcus didn't need to turn to know who it was. Brandon stepped inside. Hope I'm not interrupting, he said lightly. Marin glanced up. We're in the middle of just a moment, Brandon said, already moving toward the table. He stopped beside Marcus, placing a single sheet of paper down in front of Marin. Additional documentation, he said. Marin picked it up. Her eyes moved across it. Then her posture changed. Subtle, but Marcus saw it. What is that? He asked. Brandon's voice stayed calm. Access logs, he said. From an external server. Marcus felt the ground shift beneath him. That's not... These show repeated entries, Brandon continued, speaking over him. Late hours. Remote access points. Marcus leaned forward, his voice sharper now. That's not me. Marin held up a hand. Let's keep this structured, she said. But the structure was already breaking. Marcus looked at the paper, at the timestamps, at the pattern. Whoever had done this had done it carefully. Where did you get this? Marcus asked. Brandon smiled slightly. Ship audit, he replied. Marcus shook his head. No, he said. That's not possible. I don't even have enough, Marin said, her tone firm now. Silence snapped back into place. Marcus leaned back slowly, his hands resting flat against the table. He felt it then. Not confusion, not uncertainty. Certainty. This wasn't an investigation. It was a setup. Marin looked between them. Then down at the documents. Then back at Marcus. I'm going to need you to surrender your access badge, she said. The words hit harder than anything else. For the duration of the review. Marcus didn't move. Are you suspending me? He asked. Marin hesitated. Just for a second, yes. The room went quiet. Marcus reached into his pocket, pulled out the badge, looked at it, then placed it on the table. The sound it made was small, but final. He stood. No anger, no outburst, just stillness. Brandon stepped back slightly, giving him space. Best to let the process work, he said. Marcus didn't look at him. He walked out of the room, out of the hallway, out of the building. The glass doors closed behind him with a soft, quiet seal. Outside, the city was still moving. Cars passing, people talking. Life continuing like nothing had changed. But for Marcus, everything had. His job, his name, his place, gone. Just like that. His phone buzzed in his pocket. He pulled it out. A message. Unknown number. He opened it. Final notice. 10 days. No further extensions. Marcus stared at the screen, then slowly lowered the phone. Two worlds, both collapsing, at the same time. He stood there on the sidewalk, the wind cutting through his jacket, the noise of the city rushing past him. And for the first time in a long time, he didn't know what to do next. The walk home felt longer than it ever had. Not because the distance changed, but because everything inside Marcus had slowed down. Each step landed heavier. Each breath felt like it had to be pulled in and held there, like the air might run out if he let it go too quickly. The city didn't notice. It never did. Cars passed. People argued on the corner. A delivery truck double-parked and blocked traffic while someone shouted from a window above. Life kept moving with the same stubborn rhythm it always had. Marcus walked through it like he wasn't fully part of it anymore. His phone stayed quiet in his pocket. No call from Evelyn. No message correcting anything. Just silence. By the time he reached his building, the sun had already dipped low enough to turn the hallway lights on. The flickering bulb above the stairwell buzzed as he climbed, each step echoing in a space that suddenly felt too empty. He unlocked the door. Inside, the apartment felt smaller than usual. The air was still, warm but not comforting. Kayla sat at the kitchen table, her legs swinging slightly beneath the chair, a crayon in her hand. The paper in front of her was covered in color, bright, uneven lines filling the shape of a house. She looked up when he came in. "Hi, Daddy." Marcus forced a small smile. "Hey, baby." She watched him a little longer than usual. Kids notice things. They don't always understand them, but they feel them. "You're home early," she said. "Yeah," he replied, setting his keys down on the counter. "Work let me go early today." It wasn't a lie, but it wasn't the truth either. Kayla tilted her head slightly, studying him in that quiet, careful way she had. The way that made Marcus feel like she saw more than she should have to at her age. "Did you fix something?" she asked. Marcus paused. "Yeah," he said softly. "I think I did." She nodded like that made sense. Then she turned the paper around and held it up. "Look," she said. Marcus stepped closer. It was the same drawing as before, but finished now. A small house, yellow door, windows glowing with soft orange light, and next to it 2 figures holding hands, one tall, one small. And something new, a third shape drawn just outside the door, not fully inside, not fully outside. Marcus felt his chest tighten. "Who's that?" he asked gently. Kayla shrugged. "I don't know," she said. "Maybe someone coming over?" He nodded slowly. "Maybe." She set the drawing down and looked back at him. "You okay?" she asked. The question came soft, simple, but it landed harder than anything Brandon had said that morning. Harder than the badge hitting the table. Harder than the message from the landlord. Marcus opened his mouth, closed it. He looked at her. Really looked. At the trust in her eyes. At the way she waited without pushing. And for the first time that day, he didn't have an answer. Kayla shifted in her seat. "Did I do something wrong?" she asked. The words came out quieter this time, more careful. Marcus felt something inside him crack. Not loudly, not all at once, just enough. "No," he said quickly, too quickly. He stepped closer, kneeling down in front of her so they were at the same level. "No," he repeated, softer now. "You didn't do anything wrong. Not a single thing." She watched his face, searching. "Then why do we have to leave?" she asked. Marcus froze. The room went silent. The hum of the refrigerator, the faint sound of traffic outside. Even the ticking clock on the wall seemed to fade into the background. He hadn't told her. Not yet. He thought he had more time. Kids always know. Kayla's eyes stayed on his. Not scared, not crying, just waiting. Marcus swallowed. He could feel the words sitting there, heavy and wrong, no matter how he tried to shape them. "We're not leaving," he said finally. It wasn't entirely true, but it was what she needed to hear. Her shoulders relaxed just slightly. "Okay," she said. And just like that, she believed him. Marcus stood slowly, turning away before she could see the look on his face. He walked to the counter, resting his hands against it, staring at nothing. Behind him, Kayla went back to coloring. Like the world hadn't just shifted, like everything was still safe. His phone buzzed. Marcus didn't move right away, then he reached for it. Evelyn. He stared at the name, then answered. "Hello?" For a second there was no sound. Then her voice came through, calm, controlled, but with something underneath it now. "I heard," she said. Marcus let out a quiet breath. "Yeah. I told you to be careful." "I was." A pause, then, "They've escalated it," she continued, "faster than I expected."
Marcus leaned against the counter. "Feels like they were ready for it," he said.
They were. The certainty in her voice made his stomach tighten. Another silence settled between them. Then Marcus spoke. "You need to step back," he said. The words surprised even him. On the other end, Evelyn didn't respond immediately. "Excuse me?" she said. "You heard me," Marcus replied, his voice steady now. "This isn't just about me anymore. If they're willing to do this, to change records, to push me out, they're not going to stop at me." He glanced toward Kayla. She was still coloring. "Still safe. For now. You've got a company," he continued. "A board. People watching every move you make. You can't get pulled into this." Evelyn's voice stayed calm. "I already am." "No," Marcus said. "Not like this. Not where it costs you everything." "And you?" she asked quietly. "What does it cost you?" Marcus didn't answer. He didn't have to. The silence said it for him. "That's not your decision to make," she said. "It is if I walk away," he replied. Another pause, longer this time. Then her voice softened, just slightly. "Don't make that decision tonight," she said. Marcus closed his eyes for a second. "I'm serious." "I know," she replied. "That's why I'm telling you to wait." He let out a slow breath. On the other side of the room, Kayla hummed softly to herself as she colored. A small, steady sound. A reminder of what mattered. "I don't want you losing everything over this," Marcus said. Evelyn's response came quieter now. "Marcus," she said, "this didn't start with you. And it doesn't end with you." He didn't reply, because part of him knew she was right. But another part, the part that had learned to survive by staying small, staying quiet, didn't believe it could end any other way. "Get some rest," she said finally. "We'll figure this out." The line went dead. Marcus lowered the phone slowly. The apartment felt even quieter now. He turned back toward Kayla. She looked up and smiled at him. Just a small, simple smile. The kind that assumed everything was going to be okay. Marcus nodded back. But inside, he felt the ground shifting again. This time, deeper, more dangerous. Because now it wasn't just about losing his job, or losing his apartment. It was about choosing between two things he couldn't hold at the same time. Protecting the only life he had left, or standing up for a truth that might take it all away. And for the first time, he didn't know which one he was going to choose. The apartment felt different the next morning. Not because anything had changed. The same chipped counter, the same flickering light, the same piece of paper still taped to the refrigerator like it belonged there. Final notice. 10 days. But now it wasn't just a warning. It was a clock. Marcus stood in the middle of the room, a cardboard box open at his feet. Inside it, a few folded clothes, a stack of Kayla's books, a small plastic toy missing one wheel. He hadn't decided to pack, not officially, but his hands had started doing it anyway. That was the thing about survival. Sometimes your body made decisions before your mind could catch up. From the other room, the soft hum of morning cartoons drifted through the apartment. Kayla sat cross-legged on the couch, eyes fixed on the screen, a bowl of cereal balanced carefully in her lap. Normal. As normal as anything could be. Marcus picked up a small jacket, purple, worn at the edges, and held it for a second longer than necessary. Kayla's. He folded it slowly and placed it in the box, then stopped. His hands rested on the edge of the cardboard, fingers pressing into it like he was trying to hold something in place. This wasn't how it was supposed to go. He had done everything right. Worked the hours, took the jobs nobody wanted, stayed quiet when people talked down to him, fixed things that weren't his responsibility. He had done everything right, and it still wasn't enough. The thought didn't make him angry. It made him tired. His phone buzzed on the counter. Marcus didn't move right away. Then he walked over and picked it up. A message from an unknown number. He opened it. "Lock change scheduled," Today at 12 p.m. Marcus stared at the screen. Today. Not 10 days. Today. His jaw tightened. No explanation, no warning, just a decision made somewhere else by someone who would never have to look his daughter in the eye and explain it. He lowered the phone slowly. For a second, the room tilted. Just slightly. Like the ground had shifted under him and hadn't quite settled back. "Daddy?" Kayla's voice cut through the silence. Marcus turned. She was looking at him now, the cartoon forgotten. "What's wrong?" He forced a breath in. "Nothing," he said. "Just getting things ready." She slid off the couch and walked toward him. "For what?" Marcus didn't answer. He couldn't. Kayla stopped in front of him, her small hands reaching out to hold his. "You said we're not leaving," she said. The words were quiet, but they carried weight. Marcus looked down at her, at the trust still sitting there, unbroken. He swallowed. "We're figuring things out," he said carefully. Kayla's fingers tightened slightly around his.
Then she nodded. Not because she understood, because she wanted to.
There was a knock at the door. Sharp. Unexpected. Marcus's head snapped toward it. Another knock. He walked over slowly and opened it. Opal stood in the hallway, her robe wrapped tight around her, eyes already scanning his face. "I heard," she said. Marcus stepped back to let her in. "How?" "Word travels," she replied, closing the door behind her. "Landlord been talking loud this morning." Marcus nodded faintly. "That sounds like him." Opal looked around the apartment, her gaze settling on the box on the floor. "You packing?" she asked. Marcus hesitated. "Just preparing." Opal let out a quiet breath. "You don't prepare for this," she said. "You survive it." Kayla walked over and wrapped her arms around Opal's waist. "Miss Opal," she said softly. Opal bent down, pulling her into a hug. "I got you, baby," she murmured. "You hear me? I got you." Marcus looked away for a second. Sometimes kindness made things harder, not easier.
Because it reminded you what you were about to lose.
"I can take her," Opal said, standing back up. "For the day. Maybe longer if you need." Marcus nodded. "Thank you." Opal's eyes stayed on him. "You got somewhere to go?" He didn't answer. She already knew. "Then you figure that out," she said. "I'll handle her." Kayla looked between them. "Am I in trouble?" she asked again, her voice smaller now. Marcus dropped to one knee in front of her. "No," he said firmly. "You're not in trouble. Not now, not ever." She studied his face, then nodded. "Okay." Opal took her hand. "Come on, baby," she said. "Let's go make something sweet." Kayla glanced back once as they walked toward the door. Marcus gave her a small smile. She smiled back. Then she was gone. The door closed, and the apartment went quiet. Too quiet. Marcus stood there for a long moment. Then he moved. Fast. Not rushed, but focused. He grabbed the folder from the top of the cabinet, the one he hadn't touched since last night. Inside were the copies. Every note, every record. Every detail he had pulled together, piece by piece. The truth. The only thing he had left that couldn't be taken from him. He flipped through it quickly. Everything was there. Still intact. He closed it and held it in his hands. This was it. The choice. Stay quiet. Walk away. Protect what little he had left. Or step forward and risk everything. Marcus walked to the window. Outside, the city moved like it always did, unaware, unbothered. He thought about Evelyn, about her voice on the phone. This didn't start with you, and it doesn't end with you. He thought about Brandon, the look in his eyes, the warning that wasn't really a warning. Stay in your lane. He thought about Kayla, the drawing, the yellow door, the third figure standing just outside. Marcus let out a slow breath. Then he reached into his pocket and pulled out his phone. He didn't hesitate this time.
He didn't overthink it. He just dialed. The line rang once, twice. Then, "Marcus," Evelyn's voice answered. "I'm coming in," he said. A pause. "Today," he added.
Another pause. Then,
"Good,"
she said quietly. Marcus hung up. He picked up the folder, looked around the apartment one last time, then walked toward the door. Behind him the box sat open, half-packed, like a life paused in the middle of being taken apart. Marcus stepped into the hallway, closed the door. And this time, he wasn't walking away from something. He was walking straight into it. The only question now was, would it be enough to stop what was coming? Or had he already waited too long? The hotel ballroom didn't look like a place where truth was supposed to happen. It looked like a place for speeches, for polished words and controlled smiles, for people in tailored suits holding glasses they barely drank from, nodding at conversations they didn't fully mean. Marcus stood just outside the entrance for a moment, the folder tucked under his arm, his reflection faint in the glass doors. He didn't belong here. That much was obvious. The sign beside the entrance read, "Harbor Light Annual Housing Forum." Below it, smaller text, "Building Communities That Last." Marcus let out a quiet breath. Then he pushed the door open. Inside, the room stretched wide and bright, filled with rows of chairs and clusters of people standing near tall tables. The hum of conversation filled the space, soft but constant, like a machine running in the background. Nobody noticed him at first. That was the strange part. He walked along the edge of the room, past groups of people discussing numbers and policies and investments, their voices low, their laughter measured. This was their world. Clean, controlled. Nothing like the buildings he worked in. Nothing like the lives those buildings held. Marcus tightened his grip on the folder. Then he saw her. Evelyn stood near the stage, speaking with a man in a dark suit. Her posture was the same as always, steady, composed, impossible to read from a distance. For a second, Marcus almost turned around. Almost. But then he thought about Kayla, about the drawing, about the box sitting half-packed in the apartment. He kept walking. It wasn't until he was halfway across the room that Evelyn saw him. Her eyes shifted, stopped. For just a fraction of a second, something broke through her usual composure. Recognition. Then she excused herself from the conversation without hesitation. Marcus didn't stop moving. Neither did she. They met near the edge of the stage. Up close, the noise of the room seemed to fade slightly, like the space around them had narrowed. "You came," she said. Her voice was low. Marcus nodded. "You said we needed to talk." Her eyes dropped briefly to the folder in his hand. "What's that?" He held it out. "Everything I could get," he said. "Paper copies, before anything was changed." Evelyn took it, opened it. Her eyes moved quickly across the first few pages, then slowed, then stopped. Marcus watched her face, not for emotion, for confirmation. He saw it. A small shift, subtle, but there. "This predates the logs," she said quietly. "Yeah." She flipped another page. "And the signatures." "Original," Marcus said, "from the site." Evelyn closed the folder slowly. The noise of the room seemed louder now, closer, like the world was pressing back in. "You understand what this means," she said. Marcus nodded. "It means they didn't just cover it up," he replied. "They built something over it." Evelyn looked at him for a long second. Then she made a decision. Marcus could see it happen, not in her words, in the way she straightened, in the way her shoulders settled, in the way her grip on the folder tightened just slightly. "Stay here," she said. Then she turned and walked toward the stage. Marcus stood where he was. The room didn't stop. People still talked, still laughed, still moved through the space like nothing had changed. But something had. He could feel it.
like the air had shifted just enough to make everything else unstable. Evelyn stepped onto the stage. The microphone stood waiting.
The screen behind her displayed the title of the event, clean and bright. Someone near the front began to clap, assuming this was the scheduled transition. Others followed. The room slowly quieted. Marcus didn't move. He stayed near the back, watching. Evelyn adjusted the microphone slightly, looked out at the room, then down at the folder in her hand. For a moment, it looked like she might open it, read from it, follow the plan. She didn't. Instead, she set it down, closed, deliberate, and looked back up. "I had prepared remarks for today," she said. Her voice carried easily across the room, clear, controlled, but different now. About growth, about investment, about the future of our communities. A few heads nodded. Familiar language. Safe language. Evelyn paused, then continued. "I'm not going to give that speech." The room shifted. Not loudly, but noticeably. A ripple of confusion moving through the audience. Evelyn's gaze didn't waver. "Because this morning I was given information that changes what this company needs to talk about." The silence deepened. Marcus felt his heart start to pound. "This information shows discrepancies in our vendor operations," she continued. "Inflated charges, misreported repairs, fees applied to residents that were never justified." Now people were paying attention. Fully. The air in the room tightened. Evelyn picked up the folder again. "This is not speculation," she said. "This is documented." Marcus saw movement near the front. Brandon. He stood slowly, his expression controlled, but not calm. Evelyn didn't look at him. Not yet. "This affects real people," she continued. "Families, tenants, individuals who trusted that the systems we built were designed to protect them." Marcus felt something shift in his chest. Not fear, not me more. Something else. Something closer to release. "And it was brought to my attention," Evelyn said, her voice steady, "by someone who had every reason to stay silent." Now she looked at him. Across the room. Past everyone else. Direct. Unavoidable. Marcus didn't move. Didn't react. He just stood there. Steady. "His name is Marcus Reed," she said. The room turned. All at once. Dozens of faces. Then more. Looking back. At him. Marcus felt it. The weight of it. But he didn't step back. Didn't lower his eyes. He held his ground. Because there was nowhere else to go. Near the front, Brandon's expression finally broke. Just slightly. Not panic. Not yet. But calculation. Fast. Desperate. Evelyn continued. "The information he provided is already under review by our legal team," she said. "And effective immediately, we are suspending all operations connected to these discrepancies pending a full investigation." The words hit the room like a wave. People shifted in their seats. Phones came out. Whispers started. Marcus watched Brandon. Watched the way he turned to the people beside him. Spoke quickly. Too quickly. But it didn't matter. Not anymore. Because this wasn't happening in a room behind closed doors. This was happening here. In front of everyone. Evelyn stepped back from the microphone. Not finished, but done with the part that could be controlled. The rest would take its own shape. She walked down from the stage, straight toward Marcus. The crowd parted slightly as she moved, not fully, but enough. When she reached him, she didn't say anything at first, just stood there, the noise of the room rising around them. Then, quietly, "You stayed," she said. Marcus nodded. "You told me to." A small pause, then, "You didn't have to," she replied. Marcus glanced around the room, at the people watching, at the world that had just shifted. "Yeah," he said softly. "I did." Behind them, the room continued to unravel. Questions, voices, movement. But for a moment, just a moment,
Everything felt still, like something had finally been said that couldn't be taken back. The truth was out. But Marcus knew something Evelyn hadn't said yet, something the room didn't understand. Truth didn't end things. It started them.
And this was only the beginning. The room didn't explode, not the way Marcus thought it might. There was no shouting, no chaos, just movement. A slow unraveling. Voices rising in controlled tones. People leaning into each other, whispering questions that didn't have easy answers. Phones lifted, screens glowing, messages already being sent before anyone fully understood what had just happened. Marcus stood still in the middle of it. Not because he didn't know what to do, because there was nothing left for him to do. The truth was out, and now it belonged to everyone. Evelyn stepped away from him, already being approached by a cluster of people, board members, investors, faces Marcus had only ever seen in framed photos or company emails. Their expressions were tight, measured, concerned in a way that had nothing to do with the people living in the buildings they managed. "Evelyn," one of them said sharply, "what exactly is this?" Marcus watched from a distance as she answered. Not defensive,
Not uncertain, just clear. An internal issue that requires immediate action, she said. You made a public statement without board review, another voice added. I made a necessary one, she replied. The tone shifted. Not louder, but harder. Marcus felt it ripple through the room. This wasn't just about fraud anymore. This was about control, about who decided what was said, and when. Behind him, the doors to the ballroom opened again. 3 people stepped inside, not dressed like the others. No tailored suits, no polished smiles. Legal. Marcus knew it without being told. They moved quickly, scanning the room before heading straight toward Evelyn. Brandon saw them too. Marcus caught the exact moment it registered. That flicker of something. Calculation turning into realization. He stood near the front, speaking low to another executive, but his posture changed. Less relaxed. More alert. Marcus took a step forward, not toward Evelyn, toward him. He didn't know why. Maybe he needed to see it up close. To understand what it looked like when someone realized the system they controlled was starting to slip, Brandon turned just as Marcus approached. Their eyes met. For a second, everything else faded. The noise, the movement, the room full of people who suddenly mattered less than the space between the two of them. You really went through with it, Brandon said quietly. Marcus didn't respond. Brandon let out a short breath, almost a laugh. Do you have any idea what you've done? He asked. Marcus held his gaze. Yeah, he said. I told the truth. Brandon shook his head slowly. That's not how this works. Maybe that's the problem. A pause. Then Brandon stepped closer, lowering his voice. You think this ends here? He said. You think they're just going to let this play out because you walked in with a folder? Marcus didn't move. I think people deserve to know what's happening to them, he said. Brandon's expression tightened. People deserve stability, he replied. Systems. Order. You tear that down without understanding what holds it up. It wasn't holding them up, Marcus cut in. It was taking from them. Silence. Brandon's jaw shifted slightly. You're out of your depth, he said. Marcus nodded once. Maybe, he replied, but I'm not wrong. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Then Brandon straightened, stepping back just enough to create distance again. This isn't over, he said. Marcus watched him. I know, he replied. Because he did. He had known from the moment Evelyn stepped onto that stage. Truth didn't end things. It complicated them. Across the room, the legal team had reached Evelyn. Voices lowered. Decisions made in seconds that would ripple out for weeks. Marcus saw one of the board members step in, speaking sharply, his tone no longer controlled. Evelyn didn't back down. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't need to. There was something different about her now. Not just authority, conviction. The kind that didn't shift under pressure.
Marcus felt something settle in his chest. Not relief, not yet, but something close to it, a recognition. She wasn't stepping back, not this time. A hand touched his arm lightly. Marcus turned. Maren stood beside him. Her expression was different now, not neutral, not distant. "First, I need to speak with you," she said. Marcus nodded. They moved toward the edge of the room, away from the center of attention. Maren glanced down at the folder still in his hand. "These copies," she said. "Are they complete?" "Yes." "Original dates?" "Yes." "Chain of custody?" Marcus met her eyes. "I never let them out of my sight." She studied him for a moment, then nodded. "Good." A pause, then quieter. "I should have looked closer the first time." Marcus didn't respond. Not because he didn't have something to say, because it didn't matter anymore. What mattered was what happened next. Maren exhaled slowly. "This changes the investigation," she said. Marcus nodded. "I figured." She hesitated, then added, "It also changes your position." Marcus frowned slightly. "How?"
Maren held his gaze.
"You're not the subject anymore." The words landed softly, but they carried weight. Marcus felt it. The shift. Subtle, but real. "What am I then?" he asked. Maren didn't answer right away. She glanced back toward the center of the room, toward Evelyn, toward the legal team, toward Brandon, then back at Marcus. "You're the reason this doesn't get buried," she said. Silence settled between them. Not heavy, not tense, just clear. Marcus looked down at his hands, at the folder, at everything that had brought him here, then back up. Across the room, Evelyn caught his eye again, just for a second. And this time, she didn't just acknowledge him. She nodded, small but deliberate. Marcus nodded back, because now he understood something he hadn't before. This wasn't just her fight, and it wasn't just his. It was something bigger than both of them. Something that had already started moving and wasn't going to stop. The room continued to shift around them, people leaving, people arriving, conversations breaking apart and reforming, but Marcus stayed where he was, not lost in it, not overwhelmed by it, just present. Because for the first time since that message at 2:18 in the morning, he wasn't standing alone. And whatever came next, he was ready to face it. The days that followed didn't feel like victory. They felt like waiting. Marcus noticed it in the silence. Not the kind that comes when everything is calm, but the kind that comes when something is moving behind closed doors. Decisions being made in rooms he wasn't in. The city didn't slow down, but his life did. No more shifts, no more clock-ins, no routine to anchor the day, just hours that stretched longer than they should have, filled with small tasks that didn't really matter, folding clothes, checking the same emails twice, staring at his phone like it might tell him something before anyone else did. The apartment was still his, for now. The lock hadn't been changed. The final notice still hung on the refrigerator, but something about it felt paused, not gone, just held in place, like the moment before something either breaks or gets pulled back. Kayla didn't ask as many questions anymore. That was worse. She stayed close to him when he was home, sitting near his chair while she read or drew, her presence quiet but constant, like she understood something had changed, even if she didn't know what. Opal came by more often, brought food, stayed longer than she needed to. She didn't talk about the situation directly, didn't press. She just made sure there was something warm in the kitchen and someone else in the room. It helped more than Marcus wanted to admit. On the third day, his phone finally rang. Not a message, a call. Maren. Marcus answered on the second ring. "Hello?" "Mr. Reed," she said. "We need you to come in." His chest tightened slightly. "For what?" A review, she replied. It won't take long.
Marcus glanced at Kayla, sitting at the table with her crayons spread out in front of her. "Okay," he said. "I'll be there." The building looked the same. That was the strange part. Same glass walls, same polished floors, same quiet hum of people moving through spaces designed to feel controlled. But Marcus wasn't the same man walking into it. This time he didn't hesitate at the entrance, didn't second-guess himself. He walked straight through the doors, past the front desk, toward the elevators. People still looked. They always would. But the looks had changed. Less dismissive, more uncertain. Like they didn't know what to make of him anymore. The conference room was the same one as before. Same long table, same bright lights. But this time, the room wasn't empty. Maren sat at one side. 2 other people sat beside her. Legal, Marcus assumed. And Evelyn. She was there too. Not at the head of the table. Not in control of the room. Just present. Marcus took a seat across from them. For a moment, no one spoke. Then Maren began. "We've completed the initial review," she said. Her voice was steady. Professional, but not distant. Marcus listened. "The digital access logs that were used to suspend you," she continued, "have been verified as altered." Marcus felt the words settle into him slowly. Not relief, not yet. Just confirmation. "The original system records," she added, "do not match the versions submitted in the complaint." Marcus glanced at Evelyn. She didn't look at him. Her focus stayed on Maren. "As a result," Maren continued, "the complaint against you has been dismissed." Silence. Then, "Effective immediately, your suspension is lifted." Marcus sat still, letting it land, letting it take shape into something real. "You still have a position here," Maren said. The words echoed slightly in the room. Still. Marcus leaned back slightly in his chair. For a moment he didn't say anything. Then, "And Brandon?" he asked. Maren's expression shifted. Subtle, but enough. "He is no longer with the company," she said. Marcus exhaled quietly. Not satisfaction, not triumph, just something closing. "There is an ongoing investigation," she added. "External auditors are involved. The scope is larger than initially expected." Marcus nodded once. He had known that. From the beginning. Maren folded her hands. "There's one more thing," she said. Marcus waited. She glanced at Evelyn, then back at him. "The situation with your housing," she continued. "It has been reviewed as part of the broader investigation." Marcus felt his chest tighten again. "The landlord you mentioned," she said, "is connected to the same vendor network under review." Marcus's jaw shifted slightly. "So the notice is under legal dispute," she said. "Pending review, no eviction action can be enforced." The words hit harder than anything else. Not because they were loud, because of what they meant. Kayla's room, the couch, the kitchen table, still his. Marcus let out a breath he didn't realize he'd been holding. "For how long?" he asked. "As long as the investigation requires," Maren replied. "And after that, we'll reassess. It wasn't permanent, but it was enough, for now." The room went quiet again. Maren closed her tablet. "That concludes the review," she said. The others began to gather their things. Chairs shifted, papers moved. The meeting was over. But Marcus didn't stand right away. Neither did Evelyn. For a moment it was just the two of them, the noise of the room fading into the background. "You didn't step back," Marcus said quietly. Evelyn finally looked at him. "No," she replied. "You could have." "Yes." A pause, then, "But then none of this would have happened." Marcus nodded slowly. He understood that now. The cost, the risk. She had taken it anyway. "For what it's worth," he said, "I didn't do this for the company." Evelyn's expression didn't change. "I know," she said.
Marcus stood, picked up the folder from the table, the same one he had walked in with, but it felt different now, lighter. Not because the weight was gone, because it was shared. He turned toward the door, then stopped, looked back at her.
"Thank you," he said. Evelyn didn't smile, but her voice softened, just slightly. "You stayed," she said. Marcus nodded once, then he walked out. The hallway felt different. Not quieter, not louder, just open. Like something that had been closed off before was now visible. Marcus stepped into the elevator, watched the doors close. For the first time in days, maybe longer, he felt something shift inside him. Not relief, not fully, but something close. Because the ground hadn't held. It had moved. And somehow, he was still standing. But he knew better than to think this was the end. Because life didn't wrap things up neatly. It didn't tie everything together and hand it back to you whole. It gave you something else. Something quieter. Something harder to measure. A chance. And as the elevator carried him down, Marcus realized that might be enough. The doors opened with a soft chime. Marcus stepped out into the lobby, the same polished floor beneath his feet, the same bright light pouring in through the glass walls. But this time, something inside him had shifted. Not everything, but enough. Outside, the air felt different. Still cold, still sharp against his skin, but it didn't carry the same weight it had before. Marcus pulled his jacket closer and started walking. No rush, no urgency, just steady. The city moved around him like it always did, cars passing, people talking, life continuing in that quiet, relentless way. But for once, he wasn't trying to keep up with it. He was just in it. When he reached his building, he paused at the door, looked up at the window. His window. Still there, still his. He pushed the door open and stepped inside. The hallway smelled like old paint and something cooking down the hall. The light flickered once as he passed under it, the same way it always had. Nothing had changed. And yet, everything had. He unlocked the door and stepped into the apartment. "Daddy?" Kayla's voice came from the living room. Marcus turned. She stood near the couch, her drawing in her hands, her eyes searching his face the same way they always did. Marcus didn't say anything right away. He just walked over, knelt down, and pulled her into his arms. She held on tight. Not because she was scared, because she needed to know. Marcus let out a breath he didn't realize he'd been holding for days. "We're okay," he said softly. The words felt different this time. Real. Kayla leaned back just enough to look at him. "Really?" Marcus nodded. "Yeah," he said. "Really." She smiled. Not big, not loud, just enough. And that was all it took. That night the apartment felt warmer, not because the heat had changed, because something else had. Opal came by just before dinner, carrying a covered dish that filled the kitchen with the smell of something rich and comforting. "I figured you might need this," she said, setting it down. Marcus smiled. "We do." Kayla ran over and hugged her, laughing in a way she hadn't in days. The three of them sat around the small table, the light above them casting that same soft yellow glow, but now it felt different, full, like the room had been waiting for this. There was a knock at the door. Marcus looked up. He wasn't expecting anyone else. He stood and walked over, opening it slowly. Evelyn stood in the hallway. No suit, no office, just a dark coat, her hair pulled back, her expression quieter than he had ever seen it. For a second, neither of them spoke. Then Marcus stepped aside. "Come in." She did. Opal looked up from the table, raising an eyebrow slightly. "Well," she said, a hint of amusement in her voice, "looks like we got company." Kayla stood up immediately, curious. Evelyn hesitated just inside the door. Not uncomfortable, just unfamiliar.
This wasn't her world. Marcus saw it. The way she took in the small space, the worn furniture, the drawings on the refrigerator, the life that existed here. "Hi," Kayla said, stepping closer. Evelyn looked down at her. Something in her expression shifted.
Softened.
"Hi,"
She replied. Kayla held up her drawing. "This is our house," she said. "It has a yellow door so we can always find it." Evelyn looked at the paper, then back at Marcus. For a moment, there was something unspoken there. Recognition. Understanding. Then Kayla pointed to the third figure. "That's you," she said. Evelyn blinked. "Me?" Kayla nodded. "You're the one who came over." Silence filled the room for a second. Not awkward, just real. Evelyn glanced at Marcus again. He didn't say anything. He didn't need to. Opal cleared her throat lightly. "Well," she said, "if she's going to stand there all night, she better sit down and eat." A small smile touched Evelyn's face. The first real one Marcus had seen. "Thank you," she said. She stepped further into the room, took a seat at the table. The space adjusted around her, not perfectly, not immediately, but enough. Dinner wasn't anything special, just food shared between people who had found themselves in the same place at the same time, but it felt like something more. Kayla talked the most. About school, about her drawing, about how she wanted a lamp for her reading corner because her teacher said she was ready for bigger books. Evelyn listened, really listened, asked questions, answered them directly. No simplifications, no distance. Marcus watched from the other side of the table, not interrupting, just present. At some point, Kayla looked up and asked, "Are you staying for breakfast?" The question landed softly, but it stayed in the air. Evelyn looked at Marcus, not for permission, for something else. He held her gaze, didn't push, didn't pull, just there. "It's up to her," he said. Kayla turned back. "Well?" she asked. Evelyn hesitated, then nodded. "I'd like that," she said. Kayla smiled. Opal shook her head slightly, a quiet laugh under her breath. Marcus leaned back in his chair. For the first time in a long time, he wasn't thinking about what might go wrong. He wasn't waiting for the ground to shift. He was just there, at a small table, in a small kitchen, with enough space for three. It had started with a message that was never meant to be seen. On the stake, a moment of desperation. Something Marcus would have taken back if he could, but now, looking around the room, at Kayla, at Opal, at Evelyn sitting in a place she had never been before, he understood something he hadn't before. Some mistakes don't break your life. They reveal it. They open doors you didn't know existed. They force the truth into the light. And sometimes, if you're willing to stand in that light long enough, they give you something you never thought you'd have again. Not perfect, not easy, but real. And maybe that was the point. Not that everything worked out, but that something honest finally had a chance to begin. Because in the end, it wasn't the money that changed his life. It wasn't the company. It wasn't even the fight. It was this: a table, 3 chairs, and the quiet understanding that no matter how close everything had come to falling apart, he hadn't lost what mattered most. And neither had she. If this story meant something to you, take a moment and share it with someone who might need it. Because sometimes, the smallest moment can change everything. When Kayla held up that drawing with the yellow door and quietly placed Evelyn just outside it, that was the moment everything came full circle. Because Marcus didn't just fight to stay. He made room for someone else to finally belong. This story reminds us that one honest, courageous choice, like Marcus walking into that room with the truth, can change not just your life, but the lives of people you may never expect. It's not about being powerful. It's about being willing to stand when it would be easier to walk away. So today,
Think about one moment in your life where you stayed silent when you could have spoken up. What would happen if you chose differently now, just like Marcus did? If this story touched you, comment 1 below and tell me, have you ever made a decision that changed more than just your own life? Because in the next story, we're going to meet someone who made the opposite choice and had to live with it.